The Art Pod, in association with Red Mud Arts and the Ruth Smith Gallery.
Hello and welcome to The Art Pod with me, Ruth Helen Smith. Today, I'm talking with multimedia installation artist Sam Godfrey. Sam has been staying here on the Ruth Smith Gallery Art Residency. We're sitting in the gallery where Sam has been working for 3 weeks on their newest piece, Three Familiar Waters, which is now on show. The installation is comprised of 5 net curtains, which have been dyed delicate silvery greens, then smocked and hung from 3 lengths of copper pipe that have been twisted into a round in the middle of the room. The effect creates what Sam calls a room within a room. On the floor of this inner space are placed 3 green Pyrex dishes full of water. A sound composition containing recordings of the local river pervades the space. I start by asking Sam how the residency has been so far. So Sam's here. Hello, Sam.
Hello.
Hello. How's your 3 weeks been?
It's gone the first week went really slowly, and I kept thinking, I have all this time, I've got all this space, and then suddenly it's gone really, really quickly, and now it's the end weekend, and somehow it feels quite shocking, but it's been really wonderful.
Are you excited about opening it up to the public?
Yeah, it's been really funny because obviously I've been in here with the work in different stages of it for these weeks, so I feel like it's just a part of the furniture for me, and then suddenly now it's going to be open to people in a much more formal way. That feels quite funny, but nice at the same time. I think it's nice to invite people into this weird little world that I've made.
It's going to be quite interesting seeing how people interact with it in a completely cleared space compared to how they've interacted with it while it's been a sort of in the kind of messy studio vibe.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also when you work with textiles, I think people often feel very familiar, right?
Yeah, and comfortable.
Yeah. It's often easy just to grab out and touch it because you're so used to it.
So is touching allowed tonight? Or
yeah, it's so hard. This is the first piece that I've really made that hasn't intentionally been made to touch. So all the other installations that I've made are purposely meant for people to come in, sit down on it, or get inside it, or touch it, or at least move it to get inside of it. So this is the first one that I haven't done that. And so somehow it feels a bit more precious. So I'm not sure. I guess when I see the first person going to touch it, then I'll know how I really feel.
We have decided to go no red wine tonight, only white wine.
Yeah, I think that's...
And we'll still be pretty vigilant, but...
an aesthetic choice. Part of the
yeah. So just for context, the height of it is probably like 7 foot, 8 foot maybe. Would you like to explain a little bit about the fabric and the history of fabric?
So there are 5 panels. They're now panels, but they are originally net curtains that were being chucked out by a hotel as part of a refurb. And so they're the sort of like gauzy polyester curtains, which I've taken and I've dyed them. And then I've used a smocking technique, which is called Canadian hand smocking, to create these kind of almost V-shaped folds in the pieces that either cover the entire piece or 3/4 or half of the piece. And then those are hanging off these 3 copper pipes that have been bent into different shapes to create a sort of, a room within a room illusion. And then at the bottom there's some lace pieces that have green iridescent beads embroidered on them in these sort of funny shapes, almost like mould. And then 3 mint green, seafoam green, 70s Pyrex dishes on the inside on the floor, which will be filled with water for tonight.
Which brings us to the title of Three Familiar Waters. And it definitely does look so watery. I mean, like you say, these sorts of like V-shaped smocking patterns that cascade down the whole length of some of these pieces of fabric look so waterfally. And there's a sound component to this as well.
Yeah, so there's a sound composition that uses water from the local North Taunton area. So I've got a hydrophone, which is a microphone that's designed to go into water, And I've been putting it in the River Tour, I've been putting it in streams that come off it, I've been putting it down drains, I've been putting it all over the place. And so I'm taking some of those recordings and kind of putting it into a sound composition using Ableton. So yeah, so it's come out with this kind of ambient sounding piece that will be playing coming from inside it.
It is super transporting. Like, as soon as I saw it with the music playing, or the sounds, music, we had a conversation about where the boundary is between those two words. But yeah, with the sounds of the water just suddenly transport you into this sort of watery realm. And the way that you describe it as like a room within a room, and you've got these sheets that are not quite pinned, like you can peer between them to see these Pyrex dishes, but there's this big feeling of like concealed and things being revealed, and the idea of like fronts and backs as well, like with the smocking and sheets of fabric, and lots of interesting thoughts to do with the technique of smocking in itself, which is where you pinch two bits of fabric together to create a fold. So do you want to talk a little bit about the whole idea of revealing and concealing?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the work that I've done previously, it's always been about folds. I'm not entirely sure why, it's just sort of the way that it's come about.
Deleuze.
Well, I was going to say, I definitely have been trying to struggle through a bit of theory around folding, which is very dense and very difficult. There's a very famous piece of writing about folds by a French philosopher called Deleuze. I'm sure I'm probably saying that wrong.
That sounded great.
But yeah, so this idea of folding and what the fold allows you to do, I'm really interested in that. This idea that to be inside the fold, to be concealed inside it, there's these two sides to a fold, which I think you see with the smocking, as there's one smocking pattern on the front and then another on the back, and both I think are equally beautiful and very architectural. For me, the thing that I'm interested about with the revealing and concealing, so the etymology of the word smocking, comes from this Old Norse and Old English word, which I'm not even going to try and pronounce, but it means to creep into a garment. So I'm really interested in this idea of creeping and folding together. So that's why a lot of the work that I make is designed for you to creep into it, to enter it. I'm really interested in how people access installations when you're not quite sure if you're allowed in there or not, because traditionally you're not supposed to touch the artwork or get inside it, even though you often want to. So this is kind of why I've got these bowls as well in the middle of it. It looks like something's about to happen or has happened, some sort of, I don't know, dinner or ritual, or like something's going on in there. And I think when you walk around it, you're like, am I invited to this? Am I not invited to this? I can't quite tell, but I can poke my head in and have a look. That's kind of where the interest has come for me, which means I spend a lot of time thinking about creeping, which is totally normal.
One thing I like about not necessarily creeping, but when you walk around, I suppose, creeping around the perimeter of the installation, sort of like trying to get a glimpse of what's going on inside. The curtains kind of do this beautiful sort of like ripple effect of a sort of, as the air kind of slightly wafts around it. It's really wonderful. Yeah, it feels very delicate, very light, very fluid.
I think it's the good thing about working with textiles is they're so often meant to be in motion or movement, and then perhaps you don't think about that because we're just surrounded by them all day, every day. But especially because I work with almost entirely domestic materials, those are meant to move. They're meant to go on things, whether it's your bed sheets or your curtains or, I don't know, your dishwash rags or whatever. They're all constantly in motion. So I think being able to convey that is really, I think that's a big part of the work.
And I suppose that will link back to the idea of the fold, doesn't it? Because that sort of implies movement. And I guess smocking and the idea of creeping, and also even in the history, I've learned so much about smocking this last couple of weeks. To be a garment that's used for workwear originally, or an undergarment, and very close to like a second skin, super supple and in constant motion. Actually, it's quite nice in this very rural setting as well, sort of, to think about such a technique that was so kind of rooted here originally. And I want to find someone with a farmer's smock.
I think it's a lot easier to find the sort of nicer version of smock clothes now. Those have been preserved quite well. But I think the really older pieces, because they were seen as being, just workwear, I don't think they had quite the same reverence.
Like Keith Badman, who came round with his, was it his mother's?
It was
garment?
his wife, Irene's, her grandma's piece of clothing, a blouse from, I think, before 1915.
Incredible.
Yeah, I think the only other thing for me is that this piece feels unfinished. And being able to have this residency and being able to play with it and play with how I install it made me realise that I would like to make it on a bigger scale.
And you have a couple of pieces still in Berlin, don't you?
Yeah.
That are supposed to be, will be reunited with this.
Yeah, there are a couple
series.
More pieces of net curtains that are yet to be smocked. So I think the idea would be to make it bigger and probably that you can walk through it. So I think that will happen. But it's been really, I don't think I would have understood that about the work if I hadn't been able to put it up in this format now. And I also have these other kind of embroidered pieces which I would be interested to try and make a ceiling of some sort.
Oh, okay.
Which would make it feel even more enclosed. So I think I like the idea of these works never being finished, that they can always expand into a different room. And also because I use the same net curtains for all my work, so I have this kind of wild archive of over 100 pieces. I really like the idea that they're all connected to each other. They all keep expanding into different rooms of this sort of weird space that I'm building for myself each time.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I'm really excited to see it in this way, and I'm excited to think about where it can go next, how it can change and develop. So yeah, that's been a really important part of the residency.
The living with it.
And living with it and being around it, where it's partially in studio format, partially not exhibition, but in that people come and see it. Yeah. And also that I've been sleeping next to it for 3 weeks. So.
Yes, you said that last night you suddenly had a brainwave and went literally through the door from the bedroom into the studio space, like, need to sort out the lights. That sounded like very efficient.
Well, it was at half midnight, so I don't know how efficient I was really being, but it was really nice to
You didn't have to commute very far, is what I mean.
No, and I was in my pyjamas, just like on a chair trying to figure out the lights. But having that connection to it, I think, is really special. I don't think you get that with a studio practice in quite the same way.
Certainly not a gallery practice, as in an exhibition installation. You rarely sort of sleep in the room next door to the actual exhibition space. So
and then I think there's often an assumption that you're coming into an exhibition space with something that you already know how it's going to hang or how you're going to install it. And sometimes for me that's not always the case. Sometimes it really is in the moment, responding to the space, responding to the limitations of a space or the potentials of it. So, which is probably, I don't know how good that is as a practice, but
I think you've definitely brought home how that dynamic between living, studio and gallery, and how this particular residency really does blur those boundaries in quite a flexible way. Well, thank you, Sam.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Brilliant.
It's lovely to be here.
Oh, it's been such a joy.
I hope it connects with people in some way when they come this weekend.
Oh, it certainly will. Thank you so much for listening to The Art Pod with me, Ruth Helen Smith, and my guest, Sam Godfrey. In the next episode, I will be visiting visual artist Anthony Martin at his studio and having a deep dive into his work and practice. I do hope you will join me.
That was The Art Pod, in association with Red Mud Arts and the Ruth Smith Gallery.
Recorded on location at the Ruth Smith Gallery and the Clearwater Studios, Devon.